Okay, so we're live. Excellent.
That's good. And looking forward to talking about this. And well, how are you, Katja? Are you good?
I'm good. I mean, I'll very quickly say for anyone who hasn't come across my channel, I hopefully by now that you know both our channels. But if you're coming across this fresh, then we're doing Reading the Globe, the project that's year long, and this is the contemporary strand, and we're doing Standing Heavy by GauZ. Do you say GauZ? GauZ?
Well, I think I say GauZ.
Yeah.
And obviously that's a pen name. Yeah.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I did check his sort of real name. Not that your pen name isn't real, but it's Armand Patrick Gbaka Brede. There you go. So you can see why he does a nice abbreviated pen
Yeah.
name.
And from the Discord, so we have a chat here about the books, and we also have a Discord for anyone who's comfortable with Discord. And I thought it was interesting. I think it was Mehmet who had a copy that was signed, and the author has got a very strange signature. It's very stylized, which was quite fun. But yeah. And the translator sort of did the same, didn't he? So the
Yeah.
translator, Frank Wynne, also had a very stylized signature, which I thought was quite cool. Hi,
Well,
Carola.
I guess
Greetings.
greetings. I guess if you sign a lot of books, you have to kind of develop a bit of a an autograph that's quick
Yeah.
and distinctive. Yeah. Hi, hi.
Hi.
I'm going to stick up a first banner, which is just to say in the chat if you've read the book or you want to read it, because it's always good to have a flavour of that from the people who are here live, because I have to say this is not a book that would be you could badly spoil with spoilers, but nevertheless, if it's mostly people who haven't read the book, then that slightly changes the conversation. So,
True.
I didn't introduce myself, but you'll know that I'm Ros at Scally Daddling About the Book, so you wouldn't be here. And I'm Katja's partner in crime for the contemporary strand of Reading the Globe. But I'm just going to mention the other strands, which I'm really enjoying as a participant rather than a co-host. The YA middle grade is there's a book every other month, and that's throwing up some real goodies. And even more, I'm enjoying the classics strand, and actually the classics choice for July and August, which is God's Bits of Wood by Usman Seben.
Yeah.
It is a really kind of partners really nicely with Standing Heavy, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for highlighting that. And for YA, we've just finished Kiki's Delivery Service, which was quite a sort of heartwarming one. And we're going into a bit more of a magical realism. Well, it's fantasy and excitement of being in this dangerous other world with Cornelia Funke's Reckless.
So hi Mehmet, and hi Angelia, and and yes, a couple of people have read it, and literally, I'm not sure what your name is, whether it's the same as whether you're in the Discord, and I'm not recognizing your name, but you're saying you've read half, and that it's not something you can spoil, is it? So we should just feel free to talk about it at will. So let's kind of get rolling. Yes, I so little tiny bit more intro to the book. I mentioned GauZ's sort of full name. He's from the Côte d'Ivoire. He was born and grew up there. Then he did his first degree in biochemistry, no less. So, not necessarily what you'd expect reading the book. And then went to France, to Paris, to do a master's in biochemistry. So on a scholarship, but without the right visa. So and then later he's moved back to Côte d'Ivoire, and he's a writer and a journalist and a screenwriter and a publisher And what an interesting man with like a multitude of skills. Oh, and an actor. There you go. He's probably a musician in his spare time. But when he was a student in Paris, he worked as a security guard in order to fund himself. And because that was one of the few occupations open to him as someone with a slightly dodgy visa situation. And that was his inspiration for writing the book. And in fact, he even wrote the first notes for some of it whilst he was working as a security guard. So, and that, I think knowing that kind of adds something to your appreciation of the novel. It's his debut novel. He's written, I think, 4 more, but only one of those is also available in English. So if you read French, you're laughing, you can read any of them, but if you read English, there's only this and
Comrade Papa.
Yeah, Comrade Papa. That's right.
Yeah.
Which I now want to read, having read this. So that's the sort of basic intro. First impressions and first impressions in the comments too, folks. Let's hear everyone's first impressions.
I would say first impressions was around the structure. So you were saying it's a very difficult book to spoil, even if you get into the themes. And I'd agree, because the structure, you've got snippets. You've got snippets of observations rather than this cohesive plot. Although it does tell a story on its own, as you get to the end, it all ties together. But the majority of it is about observations and from the viewpoints of these security guards. So I like that bit of history, to know that this was his firsthand experience. And the fact that he observes the reason that most of the security guards at that time in those department stores were Black is about racial stereotyping. And that was a really clever observation from the viewpoint of one of the characters here, like, oh, I'm hired because I'm this big Black man and therefore intimidating. And that's the qualification I have to get this job. So I thought, yeah, it's very accessible. I think some people might feel uncomfortable at times, but on the whole, I didn't find it uncomfortable. I just found it very sort of like dry and satirical.
Yeah. I think my sort of first impressions as I started reading it is, oh, what am I reading here? Like, it was so impressionistic. And the very beginning of the book, you start with all these people queuing up the stairs to register to get a job as a security guard, and they're from like different francophone nations, former French colonies, and there's a bit of kind of stereotyping, I suppose, of what people wear, of how someone's Senegalese or Ivorian or from Niger, or and which was kind of quite witty, but also slightly sort of like, oh, what am I getting into here as a first impression? As the book went on, I was very, very engaged with the book, but that wasn't necessarily true of everyone who was reading it, who was talking about it in the Discord group. I'm not sure that everyone sort of had so much the same level of engagement, perhaps, as I did. Yeah. In fact, here we go. So, hello. Yeah. So she was close to DNFing because it was all over the place. Yeah. I started to understand on page 55 when you explained how it affected family back home. Yeah. So, and I think you're probably not alone in sort of slightly, as I say, thinking, what am I getting into? And yes, as Angela says, is this really a novel? It felt like author's notes for a novel. Someone else said that it felt like a screenplay, almost, or notes for a screenplay, which, as he's a screenwriter, was interesting. It's very like visual, and it is quite cinematic.
Yeah.
Of it.
But I was wondering if that visual element also plays into the cover of these eyes. And the whole idea is you've got our narrators are always observing. They have to be the eyes of the department store anyway, but that means that they become the sort of like observers of all around them, a real self-awareness, I thought.
Yeah. And it's almost like security cameras as well. You know, you're getting shots of what's happening. So, but I think even at the end, a bit of me thought, is this really a novel? I think, oh, hang on, I'll just lose that. I think I did think it was a novel and a good novel, but I also thought it was as much social commentary or character studies or, you know, as, you know, it's not a traditional novel, put it that way, you know, yeah. Although at the end it does come together more, as you say.
So a slight tangent, but I think you've also read Marguerite Abouet and her books, the graphic novels, Aya.
Yes.
And for me, because I read the first two of her novels, it really brought home for me her writing, because in the first one it was very much set in the Ivory Coast, but the second one follows one of the characters who decides, because he's gay, he decides to go to France in the second book, and his experience as this illegal immigrant, and he thought, you know, like the streets are going to be paved in gold. He had these grand ideas, and then he's just like really shocked when he sees you know, poverty, and he sees quite a bit of chaos, and not all of the people that have moved from Ivory Coast are living in mansions. So you know, it was this really echoed it for me. You know, having read that graphic novel, I sort of like had echoes of that here, because it is the immigrant experience of that sort of like 80s 90s Paris.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, one thing to say is that the book has kind of like 3 time periods. And there's actually called the Bronze Age, as in, and that felt like the Bronze Age as in sort of prehistory, and then the Golden Age as in that was the best time, and then the Age of Lead is the contemporary one, and where things have become much tougher again, much more hostile, and so on. Just where we were talking about the eyes. Oh, there we go. Oh. Remember we were saying, yeah, those eyes, yeah, Ferdinand and Assyria and Kasum and Andre. We do have, you know, if you're thinking, if you haven't read, you're thinking, oh, what would you have to latch on to in this that would make it, you know, a novel? It is, we have those four main characters, and we do get enough of them and their lives and their thoughts and their experiences, and yes, the back home, you know, all of that it bring it to life in a more, it's more than just a series of images, it's also their story. Yeah, or that was how I felt. And so, as you say, it's through their eyes. Yeah. I'm going to tell you a funny story now. Well, not exactly a funny story, but in Brighton this weekend, it's Pride weekend, and yesterday I went to the Pride parade, and there's lots and lots of security guards, basically, because it's a big parade, and then there's like a music festival type part in our local park. And I was walking into town with a friend, and we were walking past all these security guards, and she said to me, out of the blue, she said, you know, I'm not quite sure how to say this, Ros, you know, because I don't want to sort of say the wrong thing, but have you noticed how, like, most security guards are like black or Asian, you know? And I was like, well, funny you should say that, my friend.
Yeah.
I just read this novel.
And city centre nightclubs as well. You know, like the big cities and nightclubs. Yeah. So, and that again put me in mind of his observation here about racial stereotyping. Yeah.
But also, it's not just that, because it's also about what can you do if your qualifications, either you don't have any or they're not recognised.
Yeah.
You know, where you are, if you're on the bottom rung of, you know, society and jobs and so on, and you maybe certainly in the Bronze Age and Golden Age, if you're undocumented, you know, that it was one of the things you could. And then because of that, then, and you know, the book kind of explains that it almost becomes hardwired into the security guard business. You know, the people who are booking, you know, the automatic, that becomes their go-to, and even the people owning or running, you know, some of the firms that's where they've come through. So it becomes a self-perpetuating sort of thing as well. So which, yeah, I had no idea. And now, I mean, I don't know about all you and the other readers, but I'm going around looking at security guards in shops or events in a completely different way. Not that I didn't.
Locally, not so much, because I have to say, where I live, there is not much diversity. I've ended up in a very, very rural area, and you know, I don't see much diversity around me, so I'm not going to see that unless I go into the cities, which is why I'm saying, you know, like with the nightclubs in the big cities and stuff. But yeah. But absolutely, what you said about the sort of like Bronze Age and all of that, he was talking about how easy it was initially because they didn't, you know, the people that were already working in the security firms were willing to turn a blind eye to, you know, not having the correct paperwork because they wanted to fill those jobs and they didn't want to pay a huge amount to the people. So they were happy to, you know, like pay people minimum wage, maybe even less, who knows. And then you get the whole backlash around immigration and the contemporary times where everyone's saying, let's check, you know, all the papers and stuff. But he did, I think there was a part in the book where he suggested there was then a sort of like relaxing of that again. There was this really, really tightening where it became absolutely impossible. But then they realized that not everyone wants that sort of work. So it starts relaxing again.
I was just picking up on the comment in the UK. You get a lot of Asian security, you know, people of sort of that's their heritage, as it were. That's as really common.
And again, specific Asian. So, and I wonder, like, so in France, you got there was like 3 Francophone countries in particular that he covered. But over here, when we say like, you'd notice a lot of Asian security guards or bouncers, it's again, people like from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, not so much. You wouldn't say Chinese, Korean, Japanese.
So, and it's about the British Empire, you know, where same, you know, the French.
So it was about, the same way that was French colonial past.
Absolutely. It's that thing of like it's always a real pleasure in a book when you get to see the world through a different set of eyes, isn't it? And that's one of the pleasures of this Reading the Globe you know, year. And why, you know, I love reading translated fiction and fiction, but by authors from other places. And what made this interesting, added layer, I suppose, is that you're both looking. It was also shining a lens on Western European society and sort of commercialism, capitalism, you know.
I definitely got that whole commercialism and capitalism. That was fascinating. I think especially as the security guards become attuned to, you know, like what they're looking out for shoplifting and stuff. And
not a typical job for undocumented people in the US. That's in well, so it's obviously it's a European thing. And so again, it's really about empire, isn't it?
The other thing that I was thinking as we're talking about security guards is standing heavy, the meaning of standing heavy, and the fact that he talked about socioeconomic, you know, like how much you're paid is relative to whether you're standing all day or sitting all day, and you tend to get paid more if you're sitting all day, and they are standing and they're standing heavy on those legs. So
and it was even better. It was almost like he described it as like an equation, you know, like the further your coccyx is from the ground, the less you're paid, sort of thing. which was one of those brilliant little. I mean, this book is full of like little gems like that, and that was one of those little gems. The French title was Debout payé, so that's like paid to stand almost. Yeah. So it's the same meaning, as it were. It's a good translation. Frank Wynne is an extraordinarily talented translator. He translates from both French and Spanish, and a really wide variety of books, particularly kind of really sort of interesting contemporary fiction, but all sorts of things. And he's actually Irish, and he must have translated 50 or 60 books, I think, which, when you think it's quite a slow and painstaking process, is pretty impressive, I would say. He certainly, when I see that something's translated by him, I think, oh, good, and it's not like the things I've read translated by him are all very different. They feel very different. It's not like, oh, he turns it into him, so, which is the quality of a good translator, isn't it? I was kind of thinking about the big themes of the book, and we've sort of touched on the sort of colonial legacy, I suppose, as being one, and racism as another, and then the sort of capitalism sort of thing. But actually, there's a real sort of theme around human behavior, I think, and like how people behave, and we get that particularly there's two sections in the book which I particularly enjoyed, that switch from sort of telling someone's story and become they're like observational pieces. They're like little snippets through the eyes of the security guard. One is in a clothes shop, and one a bit later on is in a Sephora, which is sort of perfume and toiletries and so on. And there's a couple of things that GauZ has said. One he says in the book, which is, and I'm sure it's a quote that would have sort of stuck in your mind too, that to do that work, to be a security guard, you have to either basically be able to like empty your head, or you have to have a really rich inner life. And you can see that how he got through being a security guard was, and he says this in an interview about the book, he said he realized that he could become a reverse ethnographer. So how like Europeans had this thing of, we'd go abroad and we'd say, oh, this is how these people on this island live, or this country, and do lots of observations of this is what people in the Côte d'Ivoire are like, or so he realized that what he could do as a security guard was do the opposite, that he could be doing that kind of almost anthropological observation, and I really liked that as a way of describing what happens in those sections.
There's also this idea that with you being sort of almost invisible and being on the lowest end of the socioeconomic scale, that your observation skills and self-awareness sort of go up, so you become more able to see a place and people clearly. So who better than those security guards to tell you what the real Paris is like after a few years.
Yes, and yes, and sort of, and just what's below the shiny surface, the sort of the glamour of city like Paris, but also the sort of how grubby people's behavior can be, but also some of it was just very funny and charming. Some of those observations, very, as you say, like it's quite satirical, but it's also, it's a kind of slight affectionate sort of quality about some of the stories, aren't there?
Yep. So again, taking you off on a tangent, as I like to do when we're talking about seeing Paris clearly, I mean, I've been to Paris, I enjoyed it. I only went for a weekend. I won't claim to know everything about Paris, but what I came across a couple of years ago is something called Paris syndrome, and it just, really made me laugh because it is, if you Google it, Paris syndrome first became associated with Japanese tourists who were so in love with the idea of Paris from media and from these, books and everything, that when they arrive in the true Paris of our modern day, they are so shocked by the reality of it that they suffer like disorientation and extreme anxiety bouts and everything. And there's even doctors ended up giving it a term for tourists, not just from Japan, but who arrive there and experience extreme disappointment that manifests as what's going on.
It probably happens in London too. I don't know.
Probably.
I had a brother who lived in Paris for many years, so I kind of know Paris well, if you know what I mean. But I can, yes, I can see that. I understand the principle of the syndrome.
The disconnect.
I'm just saying hi to Tozy, who's here from Brazil. But yes, Angelia said, yeah, that's hilarious. That it's actually a syndrome. Yeah. You were saying about invisible people and how, yes, people like security guards, they're invisible. I mean, cleaners would be another, that like low wage, often people with few choices, those sort of those invisible people role. And in a way, like one of the themes of the book for me was about people, the coping mechanisms, if that's where you are in that place. Hi, Amelia. That's how do you get by, and there are some quite, when we're not getting the snippets in the shops, there's some really he connects us back to what's happening in their various home countries and political sort of shifts and changes and difficulties, but also the sort of petty rivalries between groups and like student hostel and and so there's a lot of layers to the book that when I look back at it afterwards, I realize in a short book, it's only about 150, 160 pages. He actually packed a lot in, I think.
Yeah. And I think it is because of that fragmentary style that you managed to fit that in. Because if you had tried to go for a standard narrative, I think it would have been a much longer book. But like I say, I really enjoyed these fragments of observation, and there were certain things that stood out to me. So I was talking to you about how, like I was, a week after reading this, I was walking along, and in my mind, something made me chuckle again about the book, which is when, like people lose each other in big department stores, and usually parents lose their kids. And the fact that they had one character saying, "I've lost my daughter," and I'm imagining in my mind, this little girl running around thinking, "Where's my mum?" And he's like, "Oh, calm down," and trying to, get to the bottom of things.
How old is she?
Yeah, how old is she? And she kind of goes, 40, and he's like, "Madam, I don't think she's lost." And she goes, "But I am." I thought that's hilarious. I need to find my daughter so she can find me.
So lots of little gems like that I really enjoyed. I don't know. Amelia's just saying about Paris. Yes, you're absolutely right, Amelia. It's true. But if you come from Japan and all you've seen is images of and read books about a place, you can, it may be a delusion, but
Yeah. Well, having said that, it was certainly the case for, people coming from the Ivory Coast in this book, kind of going, "Oh my goodness." And even in that Aya, the Marguerite Abouet book, with this character arriving, and he just thought everything was going to be so easy, and, the reality. And that's, purely because with colonialism, you get to hear only the good things about a country, which, by the way, made me think about how he observes that in a lot of African countries that have been colonized, the kids' names. So he talks about they call their kids Jean-Claude, and like adopting all of the very French names. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's it's the same with the British. British former colonies, and it's like I can't read this book and not extrapolate to
Exactly.
to that as well. Amelia says she says this was definitely a very unusual book. Yeah, we've been kind of talking about that, and how it's almost not a novel, except that ultimately it is, but very episodic. Yes, a brazen theft. And thought about that during the shoplifter montage. The shoplifter montage was a real little tour de force, wasn't it? It was brilliant. And that like, why am I putting myself out to capture a shoplifter for the benefit of the people that own this?
That one definitely also stuck in my mind. The fact that he was running after this thief, and in his head he was imagining all these really expensive things in the bag, and he starts to like rationalize as he's chasing. But having said that, these people who create these brands are so rich. What is one bottle of whatever going to matter? And when that thief throws the bag at him and he sees the contents, he's a little disappointed that it's sort of like mid-range products rather than the luxurious ones. So I was like,
worth running for.
Yeah.
But and some of the almost the game, the standoff between security guards and shoplifters in the stores, and like almost like a dance.
Yes.
Watching each other, and the different ways that people take things, and how they sneak them out, and and the bags, and the different there was a lot of guidance in the book for how to be an effective shoplifter, and also how to be an effective security guard.
Yep.
But yes, whether you should want to. One thing that came up, I think, in the book for me that I wanted to talk about was, and it's particularly strong in those two sections when you're seeing through the eyes of a security guard that's talking about people coming into the shops, the two different shops, and there is ways of talking about women customers in particular that did make me feel like uncomfortable, and I think I'd be interested in other people's sort of views or experience of that.
I did notice it, but what I didn't, because of the way that I read this book, what I didn't pick up on is whether it changes over time, because like we say, this spans decades. So did it start off at a time where male gaze was, like the language was very common, and we didn't really pick up on it at that time, and now we are more aware. So were the later years less full of that? I don't know. So perhaps someone was more observed it a bit better and could say whether it was throughout or whether it started off with and ended tapering off. I have no idea, because if it tapered off, then I'd think that it was very deliberate, but I don't know.
Yeah, and because I particularly noticed it in the two kind of observational sections in the shops, both of which I thought were relatively contemporary, or they certainly weren't from the 1960s bit. They felt like they were from the 90s or contemporary, and it didn't spoil the book for me, and I didn't, because it felt like it was in character. I don't know. No, I'm not saying, I'm not wanting to stereotype male migrant security guards, but it just felt like it was honest as to what that person that he, whose eyes he was writing would have thought and would have said and would have described people. So in that sense, I was fine.
I also get the sense that being the type of writer that he is, that he would have a purpose for all of that. So I do think, like if you're saying this is feeling true to a particular character's voice, then it feels like it would have been very intentional. So,
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think I sort of wondered, and then I thought, no, actually, I think you're perceptive and thoughtful enough as a writer that it has to be deliberate. Let's try that. And I was just seeing Amelia's comment. Oh, sorry, sometimes when I show it, I kind of end up double clicking it and making it disappear again. So Amelia says, I can't say I loved it completely, but I appreciated it for what it was trying to do. Yeah, and in a sense, that's all you can ask of a book, or of an author, that they set out to do something interesting and do it. And it, sometimes that'll really be to our taste, and sometimes it won't. Can see why it didn't win the International Booker when it was nominated for it. Yeah, but I mean, like to get on the shortlist is, very significant for like for a book in translation to get on that list, and also in sort of both like he in his interviews about it said he was obviously absolutely thrilled that a book like his could get picked. So I'm glad it was, even though it wasn't the winner. And it probably Amelia's probably right. I'm trying to remember which one did win that year. Was it the year that wonderful book was written in originally written in Hindi, translated from Hindi, and I've forgotten the name of it. It was long and
Tomb of Sand.
Tomb of Sand. I think it might have been the Tomb of Sand year, and if it was, I absolutely think that was the right winner, and not this. Even though I love this book, and unlike Amelia, who sort of just appreciated what it was time to do, I actually something about this book really hit the spot for me. But Tomb of Sand was a masterpiece or mistress piece.
I've just Googled it, and it said it was. I don't know. Maybe was it Time Shelter? 2023.
2023.
Yeah, 2023 Time Shelter, which I actually don't know. So I must have been sleeping in 2023, because I know about Tomb of Sand, and then I was thinking, oh, if it's not Tomb of Sand, it's probably Winter and Sokcho. But Winter and Sokcho is probably really further back.
Well, we can't keep up with everything all the time, No, I meant to read Time Shelter and haven't, so there you go. We can't. We read lots, don't we? And some things are going to pass us by. Yeah, but I'm glad I read this one for sure. I'm wondering about those people who have read it, who enjoyed the episodic style, like me, and who felt that it was unsatisfying, because I thought that it was. I read an interview that he gave about the book, and he was saying that when he'd done that thing of making the observations while he was working as a security guard, and then he went back to Côte d'Ivoire and wanted to sort of write a novel, and he was looking, and you kind of have to have this in the French for it to make sense, but then translate. He wanted to write about l'histoire, history, and l'histoire, les histoires, his stories. He wanted to bring together big picture history and the sort of the intimate, the detailed, the stories, and that's how it ended up having this sort of rather episodic shape.
Yeah.
And as you say, it was a deliberate choice. I thought it was an interesting explanation, but I know equally that isn't everyone's cup of tea. Yeah. Got some. Oh, Amelia saying she loved Time Shelter, that one, and that thing about the streets of gold, and then you find out that they're not, but you don't tell people back home, and you sending money and saying everything's fine. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So people keep arriving and getting that bad surprise.
Yeah.
You're so right, Angela. Yes. Yeah. When are we going to the house? And actually, because had the impression that everyone would be living well there, and so on. Amelia liked a bit of scattered style. Like Rose liked the time now. So you like the time and decade jumps, but the chapters in the shop didn't work so well for you, Mehmet. And weirdly, those are my favourite bits. So, and then that's good, isn't it? That's a good thing about a book.
Yeah.
That it can do different things to different people, and different bits can work for different people. So, in a way, that's a strength. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about Angelia's observation around the fact that people don't tell people back home that conditions are not great.
Yeah.
And that was also the case for the people who had really good living conditions back home. So not everybody was coming from a place of, I need to get to France because that's my only opportunity. Some people had really comfortable, homes, big families, good jobs, and just thought, you know what, there must be more to life. Let me go explore. And then so the little girl kind of going, when are we going to get to our house? She probably grew up in a house that was really nice, big and comfortable. And now she's in this building where all the tenants are on top of each other and must have been wondering, what on earth,
Yeah. I just read a book for Jane Austen July, This Motherless Land by Nikki May, and she's a Nigerian author, and it's a book that's set in Nigeria and England, and it's a kind of a retelling of Mansfield Park, but the main character comes to England and is really shocked by how sort of scruffy and sort of tatty the home is of her English family that she comes to live with. She's half English, half Nigerian, her parents, and they are, in theory, they're quite upper class and well off, but everything is old and battered and she's coming from marble bathrooms and
Yeah.
yeah, and that kind of culture shock in different directions is an interesting one. Yes, and then I think yes, where people, and sometimes it's people having been given a chance, and the family has spent so much to get them to France, to England, whatever, and or has such high hopes for what that's going to mean.
But the thing is, once that responsibility happens, even if you pay the money back, you've actually taken on this sort of like unwritten contract that by having people invest in you, it's a lifelong investment, and you're going to be sending money back home for ages, if not forever. So
and it's not just that, it's like you have to say, oh yeah, it's you're almost obliged to say, I'm happy and having a good time, because
absolutely,
it would feel,
it's like you're not allowed to be miserable, you're not allowed to feel upset about anything.
Whereas actually you are a migrant, you're not particularly welcome, you're doing the jobs that mean that you don't get to sit down, you're looked down upon, all of those things. So it's a very, you must have, it's like your brain's into, you have to have two identities almost, you put a face on for home, don't you? Which is tough. Yes, very yes, and of course the English people in this book all assumed that she came from some sort of mud hut,
Yes, yeah.
because this was England in the 1970s, when people didn't know what things were like in Lagos. So one of the things that I warmed to in the book was characters, and that I didn't think that was what I was going to get earlier on in the book. I particularly Asiri. I felt I became quite bonded with him, I suppose, as a character. He because he whereas Andre kind of comes and goes quite quickly. Ferdinand is the other one that I suppose I really attached to, and is like, and it's the different experiences, because Andre's come to excel, and Ferdinand he's come because he's failed, really. and actually, it's sort of Ferdinand that I sort of came to love, I suppose, in a strange way.
Yeah, I didn't have a favorite character. For me, this actually, I don't know if it's because of the fragmentary structure, but I felt a bit more detached, and then I was sort of like enjoying it for certain snippets. So I didn't quite connect with an individual character as much as I would perhaps in a sort of like standard narrative, but I enjoyed it overall.
Yeah, and at first you're not quite sure who you should attach to, because you're cycling through people a lot, aren't you?
Yeah.
Amelia's saying description of French culture very on point. Oh God, yes. yes, absolutely. And Parisian behaviour. I recognised a lot of people from extended family members, shall we say? But also the cultural mix, impressed. And what you didn't get in this novel so much was because it's the security guards and a lot of kind of like tourists, but what you don't get the North African migrant experience, and that's the other kind of really strong strand that if you live or visit Paris or know, that's that I almost would have I'd have loved to have had an Algerian or Tunisian or whatever character come in, because that's so sort of I can't believe that there aren't any security guards from those backgrounds too, because again they're facing the same socio-economic kind of struggles, and racism.
So I did think he did a great turning point. Like you highlighted the three sort of eras in the book, but the most striking felt like the 9/11. Like that turning point. That certainly felt far more pronounced.
Yes, and that the feeling that the world changed for lots of people, particularly for migrants in sort of in Europe, even though it was something that happened in America, that it changed the whole political climate. Amelia was agreeing with you about feeling a bit distant from some of the characters. I really, it really helped me that it there was a sort of coming together of some of the strands at the end. Made. But you've got little dog trouble in the background.
I do. He's very unsettled, and he's got his sore leg, so he just can't get comfortable. He's tried for the last 48, 50 minutes to. He's moved himself in his bed a number of times, but he's got a dislocated knee. It's called a luxated patella, and they can't do any surgery on it. So he's just on paracetamol, and I'm trying to keep him not too busy, but he's struggling. So yeah, he's sort of like pitter-pattering up and down.
Poor Poppet. Well, and so that might be his cue that we should sort of move to wrapping up, because I think we've done the book justice. I just wanted to quickly talk about what's coming in August. What we're just starting. Do you want to say something about Old Kiln?
Yeah. Old Kiln is a huge book, 960 pages, I think it says for the paperback, but the Kindle actually is very scary. It says something like 1,500. It's like, how is that possible? How is there such a difference in the page count? But anyway, it's about 968 pages for the paperback. I've got the ebook version, and I am really looking forward to this one because I've got an interest in that particular era, and the fact that it is going to be really blunt and is going to be very honest about pettiness amongst people who are living in poverty, because very often we have these stories about, okay, if you're poor, at least you know how hard it is, and you're all kind to each other, you're all in the same boat. But this book is going to sort of like put pave to that, and is going to be really eye-opening about how life in rural China was in that time. But it's got magical realism mixed into it. So I think we haven't had that many books with magical realism. We had the Argentinian one. What was it called? The Argentinian one with all of the ghosty sort of gothic horror stories.
Something for sunny place for shady people, or
that's the one. Yeah, A Sunny Place for Shady People.
Great
Perfect.
title, best title of the year without a doubt. Yeah, and it's at the time of the Cultural Revolution, isn't it? So that has to be fascinating. So I'm also looking forward to it, whilst being slightly intimidated by its length. And if we don't finish it, essentially is saying Sunny Place for Shady People. We got there in the end. Like we can always like slightly run over if people don't get it done.
We can, yeah. That said, I am going to try and not do too many other books. I am definitely still going to do other books, including Angelia's read along. What was it called? The book is Spectrum Noir, isn't it, Angelia? So I've had that like for the last 2-3 months. Once, so speculative fiction that Angelia's got on her read along, and I picked up the book the moment she said she was going to get to it, and then I was like, oh, it's going to be in August. So I've been waiting and waiting. So that's definitely on my reading as well. But I am really looking forward to Old Kiln. I hope I won't be, like I've hyped it up in my mind so much that I'll, we'll return in a month and I'll be going.
But if nothing else, Jia Pinghua is one of the most admired and prominent authors, contemporary Chinese authors writing in China, as opposed to sort of expatriate Chinese, or you know what I mean, and that in itself is the thing that makes me really interested to read it.
Yeah, and the publisher, because the publisher is really small, Sinuous Books. So they dropped me a line because they were so chuffed that we're doing this read along, and they dropped me a line and said they sent me all the links. So I haven't looked at the links because I don't want to read any spoilers, but they sent me all the links and said, look, we're getting great feedback and literary critic reviews and stuff. So I know it's got positive reviews, but I haven't looked at them.
Yeah. Someone was asking what the book is, so I've popped it up as a banner. Yeah, well, you have to share this and do join us to read Old Kiln. And if you're not on the Discord group and fancy joining it, I should say, it's free to be part of, and you can be relatively anonymous on it. It's not like some of these things you have to give your phone number to get on, or your email, like you can be whatever identity you like on it. So it's sort of relatively I can't think of the word, sort of unobtrusive or something, but it's a really good place for, you can have really detailed discussions and share things, and which is wonderful, and it's been one of the joys of this event, that it's a really interesting set of people, some of whom are here. And hi Jack, for some like popping in at the end. We're just about to finish, but have you done the live show for Kiki's delivery service yet?
No, I have to arrange with Jack, but it's usually in sort of like a week or 2 weeks after these contemporary ones. So
that's what I thought. And I was thinking, I hope I haven't missed it, because it was a very sweet book and I did enjoy that. Amelia was just saying she's gonna skip it, but looking forward to September, and one of the most prominent living German authors. And
you're looking forward to that too.
I'm particularly looking forward to that one, because I just loved Till. Till. I always feel like I might be.
This is the director in September, isn't it? The director by Daniel Kielman.
I'm more hyped for that than Old Kiln, but I'm really interested in Old Kiln.
Well, I mean, 960 pages. Even I can understand why people are concerned.
There you go. So let's thank everybody and say goodbye, and join us for if you fancy, and see you in a month's time. And thanks for coming. Bye.